Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, my name is Kate Strickland. I'm Associate Director of Application Review at the University of Colorado Boulder. I live in Boulder with my family, which includes a fifth grader and a freshman in high school.
Hi, I'm Hilary Dickman. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admission for Marketing and Communications at Colorado College, and I'm also a parent of 2 college students.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you, as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. This week in the news, Hale and Kate, final part of the Facebook discussion. Are these college parent Facebook groups a good thing, or are they toxic? And then we'll have a brand new interview, and it's with Elliot Felix, and we'll be looking at his new book, The Connected College. And then we'll have a brand new interview, and it's with 2 of my students, Daniela from the Philly suburbs, a recent grad of UPenn, who's now first-year medical school student, and Summer, a junior from Chicago, who's an engineering student at UPenn and has also been accepted into their 5-year master's program in engineering. So I told you I'm trying a couple new things this year, and one is this new type of spotlight. I'm curious if you find it to be helpful. I'm doing deep dives with current students as a way of getting to the culture, the strengths, the weaknesses of a college, trying to get beyond the marketing to try to give you a feel of what it's like to be a student at these schools. I really welcome your feedback on this new type of college spotlight. I plan on doing at least 6 of these in 2026, but I might do 10 or even more, depending on the feedback I get. And if they're working for you, then we'll keep doing these in 27 and 28. Once again, the goal is to get beyond the marketing and let you see a college the way students experience it.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
Okay, friends, let's transition to my interview with Kate and Hilary about parent Facebook college groups. Are they helpful or are they toxic? So I'm not saying one size fits all. What would you want parents to take away from this? Like, you brought up one really good point already, Hilary, which was start doing things earlier and you'll build some of those habits and skills and they will be able to do a lot of things. Don't be afraid of failure. I've kind of felt like that was some of your messaging. Anything else? Like, if I'm a parent out here and I'm listening, I think I would have the same question that, quite honestly, I still have right now, which is, what's the line of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate? I mean, some of the things you're reading, you just kind of wince and recoil because, you know, they just feel so just distasteful. But sometimes it's not always that black and white.
I think one bright line for me is that you should almost never be reaching out to someone at your school, at your child's institution, unless it's a financial aid thing. Like, there was one time when Bryn was at Wellesley when I reached out to the director of study abroad. She was in Chile. We were halfway through the semester and she still hadn't been able to register for classes. And the program that she was with there was just not getting it done. And Bryn her anxiety was through the roof because of it. And I asked her, would you like me to get in touch with the global studies director at Wellesley to kind of get her to help you? And she said, yes, please do that for me. And that felt like it was, we had gotten to the point where it was sort of dire, right? Like, if she did not get registered for the classes that she was sitting in on, she wasn't going to get credit, which meant she wasn't going to graduate. And she needed help. She couldn't do it by herself anymore, but she had really tried as hard as she could working with the staff down there. And I only had to send one email. I just said, hey, I want you to know that this is going on. I've copied Bryn here. Like, this has really become a challenge for her. Can you talk with her and see if you guys can figure something out? And within a week, they had fixed the problem. It was that there were numbers transposed in her passport number, which is what they used as her student ID at University of Chile. And they just could not figure it out. And it was such a mess, and not a hard thing to resolve, but hard if you don't have sort of someone else advocating for you, I think. So, that was the one time that I was in direct contact with her school. But I think it's a really rare instance when it's appropriate to be directly involved with the college. Kate, what's the bright line for you?
Yeah, I think you both are right that there's no like straight line that should apply to every child and every family. If you know that your child might be more vulnerable entering college on their own, maybe instead of trying to help them throughout, their journey there, it's important to do a little bit of extra work, a little extra research on the front end over the summer coming into college to enable those students to have the best network of advocacy and access to what they need going in. And so that your student feels confident with the resources at hand going in rather than intervening. But I certainly have empathy for these groups. Parents these days are so hyper involved in their students' lives. We are part of every single community that they're part of. And then all of a sudden, for the first time, they join a community that we're not a part of. And so I could see how the Facebook groups give the parents a sense of community and a sense of involvement that, so they're not going quite cold turkey. But at the same time, I do think that parents need to kind of know that, hey, this is going to be a difficult and challenging time. It might even feel counterintuitive to you as a parent, but it's time, to let them take the lead.
Yeah, I find that there is some very good knowledge sharing that happens in these groups that is just the kind of thing that any parent would want to know.
Yeah. I
Some
will
of it,
say,
go ahead.
oh, sorry, both my friends that I talked to, the one who is vehemently opposed to Facebook groups and the one who joined one, they both independently said, I think if there's a housing crisis and, it's a kind of campus where students have to find off-campus housing, you don't know the neighborhoods, you don't know the realtors, that could be a wonderful crowdsourcing to kind of to help your students through that.
I think I actually think they're a good way to crowdsource a lot of different information. I'm in both the CC group and the Wellesley group, and I have appreciated like what I've learned. Like just the other day on the CC one, somebody was like, "Hey, did you guys know that what was it? It was a deadline for something. Oh, like if you want to get your financial aid package back by March 15th, you need to have your CSS profile in by January 30th." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And like, that's the division that I work in. I need to turn in my CSS profile for next year because I'm the one who fills out the CSS profile in our house, right? And Callie got that email, but she didn't pass it on to me. So like sometimes there are things in there that I'm like, oh shoot, that's good. I need to know that because that is my responsibility. And other times I think it's also good because parents can crowdsource answers to questions without having to go to the school or to bug their kid about it. Like you can kind of do if you want to know what's going on, you can figure it out there without bothering your student, which I think can be good. What I don't like, and I see this a lot more in the Wellesley group than I see it in the CC group, but when a parent is frustrated about something, other parents will say, well, it's time to email the president or it's time to email the provost or whatever. And I'm like, this is not the solution. Like the solution to your kid having their radiator go out is not to email the president and complain about it. The solution is for your kid to contact their RA and work through whatever the process is for getting their radiator fixed. And so I think sometimes parents can get amped up really quickly in those groups. And it's one thing that you kind of have to watch out for is like not getting to that sort of social media, like anxiety, not letting that get to you, I think is important if you're going to be in one of those parent Facebook groups.
Yeah, I never joined, I wasn't involved in any parent Facebook groups for Karis or Joy, either EGA or Davidson. But I really agree with Hillary's point about crowdsourcing. And I'm partly being influenced by all the things that my families tell me they learn in those Facebook groups. It's really good stuff. like just kind of, this is the kind of stuff that someone will say, I wasn't gonna, go or have my kid come home and so, but I got a $99 ticket. And I'm like, how'd you get 90? And the Facebook group told me, hey, this is on until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Like, there's lots of things like that I'm picking up that my parents are learning by that crowdsourcing feature, that I think is really, really valuable. It's
My
just,
friend,
go ahead, Kate.
yeah, my friend also said that to the crowdsourcing point, sometimes both children go to highly selective East Coast schools far from home. Sometimes when a parent would start asking those like over-parenty questions, the other parents would sort of like calm them down and say, you need to trust the system, trust the resources that they have.
Yeah, I see that a lot in the CC group, and it's lovely. Like, it's just so nice to have other parents out there who are calming down their sort of counterparts.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I mean, every now and then I have a parent that is a prospective parent that gets into one of these groups. They really find they learn a lot about the school. They really do. I mean, I'm not commenting on like whether they should have been in there if they weren't a parent or whatever. I'll leave that alone. But I'm just talking about as far as a lens and insight into the culture of the place. It's kind of the same reason why even things like Z-Me. Do you guys do Z-Me? Do either of you guys that do Z-Me at your schools? No?
No.
Kate?
Nope, we don't.
Yeah, like Z-Me. I'll recommend my students do Z-Me, and they'll go into these, Z-Me, which is school-sponsored social media for perspectives. And students will really pick up differences in school culture from one Z-Me group to another. It's I know we're getting a little bit off track here, but I'm for anything that sort of peels back the marketing and lets people see schools like throughout, not through the prism of how they always present themselves, which is, you're a recruiter, and yeah, you're trying to be authentic, but you have a job. You have a job to enroll, and so that's anyway, that's taking this in a different direction than we probably need to go. So yeah, and any other tips, any other advice we can give? I think you've given some good advice, Hillary, which is there has to be a very unique situation for you to reach out to the school when it's something that typically the student should do. They are adults now.
I mean, I think like if it's a mental health situation, a safety situation, things like that, I think are appropriate times if you need guidance on how to help your student. But
Yeah,
I think there are very few times when it's appropriate.
I liked Hillary's North Star of safety, and if it's going to impact the financial element, then yes, there could be a place for that. Yeah.
And especially when your kid has sort of exhausted their resources and done what they can. And you can see where they're at the point where they're just like, they don't know what to do next. And they're so tired. And I think that then, that's an appropriate time to reach out. But I would also say, like, you've got to approach the colleges with curiosity rather than a feeling that how it should be done, or where they're falling short, or that you would do it better, right? Because I think schools have systems in place for a reason, and they tend to work really well in most situations. And so I think approaching with curiosity and asking kind of, what am I missing? How can I help my student manage this situation? Or how would you like me to direct them? I think those are better ways than I think that sometimes when parents are really upset, they get into a mode of kind of attack that doesn't go well. And it makes the staff feel, I don't know, it makes the staff at the school want to engage less with parents, which is not great. We're all on the same team, right? Trying to get these kids to graduation successfully. And so you don't want to sort of make them your enemy.
I know there's restrictions, and you have to, FERPA, you have different things, you have to sort of adhere to when it comes to boundaries. But in general, I do feel like colleges keep parents too far away. Like sometimes it feels like they just see parents as a paycheck. It really can feel that way. And I think sometimes colleges miss opportunities to have communication with parents. that would calm some anxieties, but would also be in their own best marketing interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I mean, a school can do Q&As with parents. They could do that.
Yeah,
And
I think a lot of times it's a staff issue that there's
mhm,
just not enough bandwidth. I mean, that's one of the things that we're
mhm,
sort of dealing with here. Like our parent and family office was one person for a
mhm,
year and a half. And so she didn't have the bandwidth to do what she wanted to do. Now that she's fully staffed and there are two of them in the office,
mhm, mhm,
she's planning those kinds of things, right? Because we know that it makes more sense to sort of get ahead with parents and get them the
mhm.
information that they need. But I mean, people who work in higher ed are doing too much work and wearing too many hats,
Mhm.
and parents end up being sort of the last priority, and so they get left out.
But you could argue it's a staffing issue, or you could also say, show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could also argue that if you saw it as something that was more valuable, it would be something that would find a way to get staffed in some capacity because you saw it as important. And
I feel like the parent role has been sort of gaining importance. Part of this goes back to what you were saying about COVID,
mhm,
over the last 5 years and maybe
mhm,
before that also. But I think that we're trying to catch up to that. As
mhm.
parents want to be more involved, we're trying to find ways for them to engage in healthy ways. But catching up to it while the budget isn't, while we don't have more money is, I think, a bit of a challenge.
I mean, I've said this maybe a few years ago on the podcast, but I used to be on the staff that ran a huge fair. You guys are probably familiar with it. People all descend to Georgia in 1 week for a couple of huge fairs. One is like Westminster KIPP, and the other independent schools. It's like 4,000 people come, and it's huge. Well, a lot of the schools were upset because parents were dominating some of the time at the table. So then they put a policy in place: no parents allowed. Only students could come in, and then there was parent programming, workshops, and things like that. And I said to myself, I'm thinking back as my admission side, like I would have had a flyer, that I gave to every family student, and I would have said, I'm doing a parent Q&A. We've rented out this, coffee shop or whatever, or just a room it was a big, huge place where this was held. And to me, that's just good marketing, because at the end of the day, like, the parent is often the neck that moves the head. The parent then goes back and says, they wouldn't because a lot of parents did not like this. You can imagine in all these independent schools, they couldn't come in and talk, but you give them an opportunity to get their questions asked. I think you get that back with the PR that you get is people talk to people. And so I sometimes think colleges miss opportunities to invest in parents that could end up helping them do their job, either less complaints or kill some of the rumors for current students, or on the front end, on the admission side, help with yield.
Yeah.
You seem like you're nodding your head, Hale. You don't disagree?
No, I agree. I think that's something, actually, I'd be really interested to hear from Kate on this. That's something that is also evolving, right? As parents want to be more involved in the college admission process, I think more offices are adding ways to communicate with parents. Before I started at CC, we didn't even have a welcome letter to parents of admitted students. I remember helping to write the first one. And since then, I've sort of seen that opportunity and taken it on. And now we have a lot of parent communications that I write, because I think that they're an important part of the application process. But I'm in my 5th year here, right? So it's been a big growth, for us to add all of that kind of parent-focused communication. Kate, I'd be really interested to know how you guys manage parent comms,
Yeah,
or interactions at CU.
ours are definitely evolving in that way too. So we kind of have two streams of post-admit communications. One set goes to students, and that's very depending on major or whatever. And then one set does go to parents, congratulating them a few days after the student sees their admit on the admission. Parents get a letter from the academic dean. Parents get, information about events. So, but we did add this year a question on the Common App that asks the student if we want like their parent to be kind of included in all of these comms. So we do let them kind of take that lead. But yeah, we definitely have quite a robust stream of line of communication with parents.
I think that one thing a lot of parents don't know is that if you are CC'd on an email to your student, if that goes through Slate, which is what most of us use to send communications, and if you unsubscribe, that unsubscribes your student. So if you're being CC'd on communications from a college, that's not how we're supposed to communicate with parents. It's not best practice, but lots of colleges, because they don't have a separate parent communication stream, or because they're trying to get you important information about financial aid or whatever, will CC you on that. If those emails are annoying you, just ignore them. Don't unsubscribe, because then your kid stops getting the communications that they need from the school. But we have tried to I have tried to start building out parent comms flows, starting with parent of first-year students, and there are currently 7 parents in that comms flow. I'm like, why am I building this out? Like, if I can't get enough parents, because we're not buying names of parents, right, through search or whatever. It's just if they come to visit the college, or if a student raises their hand and asks for information, and then we send them a separate communication that says, hey, if your parents would like to get this, like, send them this, and they can, fill out the parent request for information. But it's a really small comms flow. It gets bigger as they get into their sophomore and junior year. We have a lot more parents in the comms flow, but it starts out small, and I don't know if it's worth it. I know that the research that we have says that parents, like 80% of parents, want to be hearing from colleges weekly or biweekly. And I can't manage that many communications with parents, but we try to get them out between like once every 10 to 30 days, depending on where the student is in the funnel. But I don't know how useful it is. It's hard. Like, we go by open rates and click rates, right? But even those are sort of like, well, if you're at a 25 to 50% click or open rate, and you're getting like 18 clicks on an email, like, is that a good use of my time to be working on that or not? But we do want to engage parents, because we think it's really important for them to understand the process. So we're talking about, general college search kind of stuff, but then we're also talking about CC specifically. And we think it's important for them on both to kind of hear from us on what we think is an appropriate way to approach the college search. And also, like, here's this information that you should have about CC since your student is interested. But it's a growing kind of area.
Well, ladies, this has been great, and we're not going to solve cancer on this, but hopefully we gave parents some things to think about. And I would recommend Julia Lithcott-Haim's books, How to Raise a Successful Adult. I think she, is a former freshman dean at Stanford. She dealt with a lot of these issues, and I think she has a lot of good insight. So I think there's a resource for you to check out. But let you get back to whatever you're doing these days. File reading. I'm sure
it's reading time.
It's reading season. Let you get back to your files. So take care. Bye, Kate. Bye, Hillary. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, friends, we're transitioning to a brand new interview, and it's with Elliot Felix. It's about his book, The Connected College. Listen and enjoy.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, I'm going to be real honest with you. Every now and then I have a listener who says something like this to me. I have loved the Your College Bound Kid podcast for the last several years, but all good things must come to an end because I don't have any more kids. So I guess I'm going to have to find new podcasts to fill my time. Well, when I hear that, I say in my head, we've got to make our content more riveting. We've got to make our content more relevant to current college students. 31% of our listeners, according to our previous survey, have a kid in college. It's almost 1 in 3. Now, this interview will benefit high school parents, middle school parents, and students, but will immediately speak to parents who have a student in college. In my interview with Elliot Felix, Elliot shares what he has learned in his consulting that he has done to over 120 colleges and universities, all sizes, locations, and also activity levels. Elliot shares how his background has impacted the work he does today, helping colleges strategize to design their campuses to produce the most optimal learning environment for students. Elliot's new book is called The Connected College, and Elliot tells us what a connected college is. Elliot talks about what makes a great strategic plan and what are the flaws of so many strategic plans that are so prevalent. Elliot explains how he gleaned his knowledge about what makes a connected college. Listen and enjoy. Friends, I'm here with Elliot Felix. Welcome back to the Your College Bound Kid podcast, Elliot.
It is great to be back, Mark.
Yeah, our hardcore, regular, longtime listeners may remember Elliot was on almost 3 years ago. And actually, Lisa did that interview with you. And that was on your first book that you wrote. And so why don't you give us an update from then until now?
I'm happy to. So I'm Elliot Felix. I lead the higher ed advisory practice at a company called Bureau Happold, where we help colleges and universities with things like strategic plans and facility plans and operational plans. And having done that with 120 or so colleges and universities, I wanted to share what I'd learned about how they work and how they could work better in supporting students. So I wrote a new book called The Connected College. It came out about 6 months ago. It was named one of the top 10 or one of the 10 best books in higher education in 2025. And I'm excited to dig into it now and help people figure out what is a connected college and what to look for and have that improve the experience for their student, their son, their daughter.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this and happy to have Elliot here. You know, he visited me at my house this summer and gave me a fresh copy of the book. I think you were in town for I think it was a book gathering or some book launch. What was that, Elliot? I had you in Atlanta.
I'm sure it was a combination of things, but your backyard was a highlight.
There's a lot of.
Or I shouldn't say low light because it's all this terraces down. Either way, it was great. All we were missing was like a cup of lemonade, glass of lemonade.
There you go. Well, you know, I had another person visit and I said, the only thing you're missing out here is like a really nice wind chime. And so like we put a 65-inch wind chime out the just last week, actually, to try to give you that, serene feeling. Yeah. Gardening's become something I never thought I would end up doing, but you never know how life takes its twists and turns. You know?
Well, you garden to relax and I write books. So
yes.
There you go.
Yes. So, Elliot, why don't you kind of even go back a little bit more in your background, like what you graduated with in college and sort of what some of your passion has been to use your background to impact college life. I think it's fascinating.
It's interesting. The more you learn about college and the more I've learned from doing consulting work with all these institutions, at least in my case, the more appreciative I am of the experiences that I had. My background is in design, and I went to UVA for undergrad, and I went to MIT for grad school. And in between, I worked as an architect, and I loved being an architect. But I realized that sometimes we were coming up with a great solution to the wrong problem. It hadn't been defined well enough. So I went back to grad school with the idea that let me better understand the people we're designing for, the places we're in, the programs they offer. And so I sort of went into MIT as an architect and came out more of a strategist and worked really defining problems for architects to solve for about 5 years. And then I started my own higher ed consultancy that worked with another 100 or so institutions on strategy, on space, on staffing. And, over the years, that design thinking background has been really useful. And that's something I wanted to share in the book so that people who work in higher ed or people who are trying to understand it for their family can do so by understanding the different functions and how they're related and where they're separate and where they could be better connected.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to Elliot. A couple of students that I worked with were sort of interested in this whole idea of doing something similar to what he does, like, have a passion for architecture and, planning and combining it in the context of schools. And Elliot was kind enough to spend some time with both of them, and both of them told me it was extremely helpful talking to him. So he's just a really good guy as well. But I got to shout out your book. So all 5 stars right now. I'm looking at this on Amazon. Some really good quotes. Forbes says one of the 10 best higher education books in 2025. Here's another quote. In this educational leadership book, consultant and speaker Elliot Felix challenges college and universities administrations to focus and differentiate their institutions, to break down silos and work better together to enable college student success. One other one, an indispensable management guide for university leaders who want to better support their students through cutting-edge best practices. So I think that's a good overview. And I think what would be helpful for us today is to kind of walk through, well, first of all, for you to tell us what a connected college is. So that's obviously the name of your book, The Connected College, and subtitle Leadership Strategies for Student Success. So if you had to briefly summarize what a connected college is, how would you explain that, Elliot?
Well, in my work with all these institutions, I'm always encountering well-meaning, smart, hardworking folks that are trying to help students, but so much stuff gets in the way, right? The institution might not have the right strategy. They might have these siloed structures. They may be stuck in some outdated traditions. And so a lot of colleges and universities, in a way, they're kind of defined by their separations, right? The folks that are creating degree programs might not be talking to or working with the folks in student affairs that are looking after residence halls and student life, or the college might not have the right connections to companies and community groups for things like internships or real world class projects, or they might have lots of support for students, but that support might be kind of siloed and separated and distributed across the campus instead of consolidated into one place and collaborating, working together. So a connected college is where all those things are working together, where students feel like they're part of a community, where they're connected to support to succeed, where they can see how a course leads to a career path, where folks are collaborating internally and they're partnering externally with companies.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Like when I visited College of Worcester, I was so impressed that they had taken all of their support services, and they intentionally put them in the same location so that people would naturally just kind of go by each other and sort of create some community and create familiarity with all of their support services.
That's a great sign. Sometimes they call that a one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely something folks can look for, because what happens a lot, one of these separations, the classic problem, a student will go to register for classes. They realize they have a registration hold, so they can't register. They go to the registrar or enrollment services and they say, oh, you have a problem with your bill. So they go to financial services, or hopefully it's not still called the bursar. It's a pretty outdated term. And they'll say, oh, there's a problem with your financial aid. And then they go to financial aid. And the going to, by the way, could be physical. It could be digital. It could be their contact center, their call center. They go to financial aid and they say, oh, there's a problem. There's a typo in your social security number, so your loan didn't process. Folks with one-stop shops bring all those things together. So you talk to one person, or, maybe sometimes it has to escalate to a supervisor, but they bring all those folks together to better support students. And there's real evidence at how beneficial that is to students. One study looked at a whole system of 30 institutions, and they found that it was 3 percentage points higher retention. So students are 3 percentage points higher likelihood to continue from their first to second year by virtue of a one-stop shop. So as I'm kind of sharing these ideas in the book, I'm always trying to put evidence behind it, studies like that.
Yeah, that's good. So I think what would be helpful, Elliot, is to go through something that, you've written, 9 things to look for to see how divided or connected a college or university is, because you're mostly speaking to parents, and some students will listen. A nice chunk of college counselors listen. I think all of us could use strengthening in our antenna here to be able to see the tea leaves and see the signs. So I'm going to kind of just go through them and have you have some commentary. So the first thing, that you say is strategic plan. And what you say here is student success must be prominent in the institutional strategic plan with specific initiatives, programs, and metrics. So, what I'd love you to do is maybe comment on what you often see that is the absence of this, and then talk about when you do have this and kind of what difference it makes. And feel free to shout out an example, because I know you've been willing to name names of people doing this sort of thing well as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So almost every college or university has a strategic plan that lays out what their priorities are and their principles are, but often they're kind of vague. And it was sort of like they had to get everyone in a room and get all the heads nodding. And so they end up with fairly generic things. And so almost every strategic plan, and you can find this at an institution's website if you just, if you search for X university strategic plan, it will usually come right up, will have pillars or goals, and almost always one of them is student success. But oftentimes those are pretty vague. They'll say, we put students at the center of everything we do. Great. But what specifically are you doing to do that? And it's a lot of the institutions where you are, Mark, in Georgia, do a great job at this. Like University of Georgia, they talk about specific things like, we want active learning in the classroom. So students aren't just listening to lectures passively, they're leaning in, they're hands-on, they're working in teams. Or, Florida State has this great strategic plan that talks about, getting people involved in entrepreneurship. And then there's specific metrics attached where you can go to the dashboard and see, okay, how many students are actually doing that? How many are in the entrepreneurship club or taking an entrepreneurship class or starting a company? So I think what you're really looking for is more than arm waving and vague stuff. You're looking for specifics and ways that they're holding themselves to account with specific metrics.
Yeah, I like that word metrics here. I think that speaks volumes. No vague platitudes. Yeah. So let's look at the next one. Integrated first year experience. FYE or first year experience programs that are coordinated across academic affairs and student affairs that orient students, build skills, make introductions, and foster belonging and more. Tell us why this got included and why this is important, and what you often see, and what looks bad and what looks good, in a way that some of our listeners can maybe spot it when we see it.
There's a whole spectrum of institutions, from those that barely have an intentional first year experience to ones that really have this down pat. And it's something that I think students, families, and institutions are realizing is incredibly important to start strong and to build skills and relationships and an understanding and awareness and a sense of belonging. And so what you might see is someplace that does this kind of piecemeal. They have what's called a common read, where every first year is reading the same book, something like that. And that's happening in a class, but then it's not filtering through to activities they might be engaged in or what's happening in their residence hall. So you're really looking for something that's more comprehensive, where in addition to a book or academic content, you're also getting introductions to different support services, understanding where's their counseling, what are the mentoring opportunities, what happens at this Center for Civic Engagement. What do people mean by that? Oh, that's actually doing stuff out in the community. Great. So I think you're looking for something that's more integrated and intentional, where you can see different functions of a college or university working together, as opposed to, okay, the faculty are doing this seminar, and then student affairs is doing this orientation program, and then the administration is doing these events, and they're not talking to each other.
Yeah, and the next one's the one we've already talked about, one-stop student services, right? And as you say, rather than give students the runaround from office to office, Connected Colleges bring support service together physically, digitally, organizationally. So that's what I was mentioning with College of Worcester that I was so impressed with. So I have a few questions. We'll get back to going through the list in a second here, but how did you come to the conclusion? Like, how did you learn all these things in order to know, like, these are the key principles that the Connected College has? Is it doing audits of schools, or, you know, how'd you glean this knowledge?
Well, a few different sources. One is just reflecting on my work with 120 or so colleges and universities and leveraging all the great research through those projects, but also that we reference in those projects. So there are great studies out there. You know, one thing I love, just to talk about some of them, the National Survey of Student Engagement is a longstanding survey. 400 to 500 students take it every year. It's been going for 20 years. So they have great data on kind of connecting how students spend their time with how successful they are, how engaged they are. Gallup has done great work years ago with Purdue University, looking at, you know, correlating what students do in college with how successful they are afterwards. And that spotlights things like mentoring, like semester-long projects, internships, these kinds of things. So it's reflecting on the practice and then referencing these great studies, and also drawing from the few dozen folks that I interviewed for the book. And I was really lucky to be able to go in depth with a lot of my clients and other experts in the field on specific topics, and quote them throughout the book. And actually in the audiobook that's coming soon, you're going to hear their voices in it. So I'm pretty excited about that too.
Yeah, it was a lot of work pulling that together. Yeah. Well, what was there, like, one or two aha moments you had when you were interviewing leaders, things they said that you just thought, man, that's profound? Anything pop in your head?
Well, one that does come to mind, we were talking about student health and wellness, and I was talking to somebody who leads that at a large public research university, and he was saying something that I've seen in my own work, which is people hear mental health crisis and they jump right to more counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be what's needed, but a lot of times there are lots of other things that are also needed, like time outdoors, exercise, time with friends, a sense of belonging, faculty mentors. And the interesting thing, time listening to music. And the interesting thing is a lot of those activities take time. So we got to talking about, like, how can you actually unlock that time? And one service that a lot of students don't take advantage of, every campus will have something on time management. You know, if you go to the Student Success Center, if you go to the library, there are people that are waiting for students to knock on the door or to come to a workshop so they can help you with study skills, with note-taking skills, with time management. And so if you do that stuff a little bit more efficiently, you actually free up the time to take care of yourself and spend time with friends and spend time outdoors and spend time exercising. And I thought that was really interesting. Sort of like time management seems like this basic perfunctory kind of thing, but it actually unlocks a lot of profound things.
That was a great example. That was powerful. Friends, this concludes part 1 of my interview with Elliot Felix on his book, The Connected College. Hope you join us next week for part 2 of 3. Okay, friends, we're transitioning to a college spotlight student style. You can hear me interview Summer Cobb, a junior from Chicago Engineering School. Daniela Uribe, who just graduated. She's now a medical school student. And they're going to break down what UPenn is really like for us.
And now it's time for our College Spotlight of the Week.
Good morning, friends. This is a real treat for me. It's extremely an honor and a privilege for me to interview some of my former students because they're like flowers. They just blossom and flourish right in front of you. And sometimes you're talking to them and you're like, is this a 16-year-old, that I once used to meet with regularly? And that was my experience with talking to Summer and Daniela, two students. And that's why this work is so rewarding and so fun. And so many of us just love it and can't get enough of it. So in part one of my interview with Summer and Daniela, we take a look at the University of Pennsylvania by listening to the students who went there. And Summer and Daniela, they share their background, and then they share what they feel are the best things about the University of Pennsylvania. And then Summer and Daniela share what they would change if they could change anything about the University of Pennsylvania. And then Daniela gives her best advice for students. And I want every parent to get their student to listen to what Daniela says. Summer gives us an overview of the 4 different colleges at UPenn. Listen and enjoy. All right, friends, you're in for a real treat today. I'm here with Summer and Daniela, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Summer, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hello, everyone. My name is Summer. I am from Chicago. I'm a mechanical engineering and applied mechanics junior at UPenn. I'm concentrating in dynamics, controls, and robotics with a minor in mathematics. And I'm also dual enrolled in our accelerated master's program in mechatronic and robotic systems.
Yeah, and so you're starting that coming up, aren't you, Summer?
Yeah, so I actually applied during my second semester, my sophomore year, and kind of planned out all the courses, but I'm starting the coursework actually this upcoming semester, so I'm really excited.
Awesome. All right, Daniela, you're up.
Hi, my name is Daniela. I am a class of 2024 Penn grad. While at Penn, I majored in health and societies, and I concentrated in race, gender, and healthcare. And I also minored in chemistry. I was pre-med at Penn, and I'm now a first-year med student, also in Philly. Oh, and I'm from the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I actually didn't realize that Summer and Daniela knew each other, but we got on here, and they're like, yep, same sorority. We've had a little, reminiscing of all the people they know. And so, so we're just going to have a real honest conversation with Penn. And some of you regular listeners know I have a series of questions that I like to ask. And so much so that Daniela remembers these questions. She used them herself on college campuses back in the day, So the first one is, what are the best things about Penn? And, whoever wants to go first, and then the other can chime in. Summer, why don't you start out? What are the best things about Penn?
I mean, I don't even know where to start, honestly. I have to thank Mark for, introducing me to Penn. I think when I think about this, the best thing about Penn is the balance between academics and social life for me. I was really looking for a school where, I didn't have to choose between, working super hard and having, a fulfilling, social experience and, having a ton of friends and social activities. And Penn really gives me both of that. We have so many clubs and Greek life that's active that you can really find your place within our community. Personally, I'm a member of Greek life, and I'm also part of a dance group at Penn. That's something that I did in high school, and that's been a really amazing community for me. And some of my closest friends are in both of these places. And just the diversity at Penn, you meet people from all over the world with so many different backgrounds. And on top of that, we're in the middle of Philadelphia, and you can't really beat that. We have such a beautiful campus, pretty architecture, and it still feels like a contained campus, but you have access to the city, and it's super fun to explore. So
you're getting a lot of head nodding over here from Daniela, but Danielle, what do you want to
more.
add to that? What do you want to add to that?
Well, I loved Penn so much. I really can't say enough good things about it. I think really when I boil it down, I feel like the students at Penn and the professors and just everybody that I met and interacted with was so passionate, and they channeled that into whatever it was that they were doing. In the classroom, your professors were invested in your learning. Your classmates were invested in your learning. In clubs, students were always giving 110% of what it was that they were passionate about. So it was really just it gave you a lot of intrinsic motivation to find your interests, explore them, them, take them, like push them to their limit. And also like you were really always around a community of people who wanted to get to know you, who wanted to see you succeed. You wanted the same thing for them. Like I met my very best friends at Penn. We all lived on one block our junior and senior year, like next to each other, on top of each other, like sardines. It was the best experience. We studied such different things. We were such different people. But I really do think that like just the place that Penn is and how excited we all were to be there is so special. And it really does bring you together in like what I think is a very unique way.
You know, it might be helpful for our listeners to hear your high school background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your high school was like? Summer, you want to go first?
Yeah, of course. So I'm from Chicago. I grew up going to all Chicago public schools. If you're familiar with the area, I went to Walter Payton in Old Town. So my high school was a test-in high school, but still public. So I went to a very like academically rigorous high school. I think very similar to Penn with academics. So definitely wanted to be within the same environment in college where I wanted to push myself, be surrounded by people like me. I think that's just, it's something important to note, I guess. Anything else that you wanted me to mention?
No, that's really helpful. Daniela, what do you want to share?
I went to a Quaker school, a Quaker boarding school in the suburbs of Philadelphia called Westtown School. And it was definitely very academically challenging, but I also think that it was like unique in that we took a lot of unique niche classes that you wouldn't really find within a normal high school curriculum. Like we took a lot of religion, mandatorily we took religion. I took a class called Peace and Justice, all about peace and justice. I took like a whole semester on just like environmental impact of the economic sector. Like it was so random, so many random classes, but it really did like teach you, I think, to think for yourself. So when I applied to colleges, I was looking for somewhere where I would have a lot of opportunities to like be in those sort of like niche think tank type environments. And so I wanted a place that was big enough to give me that and that had other people who wanted to have that same experience. And
Great.
it was boarding and I had a lot of international friends. So I wanted to go somewhere that had that same level of diversity because Westtown was incredibly diverse.
Yeah, now some people don't know Westtown, but our listeners do because I'm always talking about it. And Susan Tree's also one of our co-hosts as well. So they get a good dose of Westtown on here. Yeah, so, but listeners, geographically, Daniela was going maybe like 30 miles, away from her high school and actually even a little closer from her home, where Summer was going from Chicago to Philly. So just a little background. So did we cover all of the main strengths or was anything not said that you feel you want to sort of underscore or shout out?
I think Summer said it, but I do think that it is really unique and to Penn's benefit to be in Philadelphia. Like being so close to a major city, your opportunities to do things outside of the classroom, whether that be internships or volunteering, there's a there's actually multiple major medical centers in Philadelphia. Like 1/6 of all doctors do some of their training here, which means that if you're interested in anything health or science related, your opportunities to do research are pretty much endless. And just like in terms of the social aspect and like being in Philly when the Eagles go to a Super Bowl is a life-changing experience.
It was so fun.
It is a life-changing experience. Being in college when I was at Penn, they lost and that was still fun, even though they lost. So, I mean, I think that like Philly as a city has a lot to offer. Penn students tend to buy into it. And I think that is unique to the campus as well. But also being its own campus, like in University City, it has so many benefits.
All right. Well, as you know, no place is perfect. And the next question is, if you were in charge and you had the power to change anything or things to make Penn better, what would you change? We'll start with you, Summer, and then we'll go to Danielle.
Yeah, so something that I think of is, I think will especially resonate with a lot of people coming into college, is I wish that, especially with the School of Engineering, I can only speak with engineering, I wish they accepted more AP scores. I think coming into school, I was taking all these AP classes expecting it to pay off, like skip classes in college, something that really didn't benefit me as much once I got to Penn. I know that we take credit for it's obviously probably changed, but a 5 in chem for like getting out of a lecture but not a lab. You might get out of physics and you might get out of math, but I know they already got rid of that. And I think that's about it for engineering. So that's definitely something. And Mark, you might laugh at this when I say this, but the dining hall food, yes, the dining hall food is something that I wish I could change. I'm a vegetarian, so I already have dietary restrictions. We have about like 5 traditional dining halls and then like some more like untraditional market styles. But personally, like there were a lot of days where I couldn't find something that like I really wanted to eat or like looked like appetizing. I was excited to get off the meal plan. So I would definitely change that. But they've done some like more initiatives since I've gotten here. They've done like meals from home where like they start taking students' recipes, giving it to the dining hall staff. So I heard it has gotten slightly better, but there's always room for improvement.
All right, Daniela, what do you got to add to that? What would you change?
I also really wasn't a fan of the food, of the dining hall food. It's honestly hard for me to come up with things that I didn't like about Penn. I loved it so much. Like, I had to call my best friend and be like, what would we change? And I think, honestly, the dining hall food is one of the big things. Also, like, the freshman dorming housing situation. I actually was a freshman during COVID, so mine was a little bit different to begin with. But I think, like, the freshman year dorms are just very, very different. And I don't know if I knew that so much going in. And so I think they could be like a little bit more transparent about that in terms of like what you're actually looking for in a dorming and housing experience and where you choose to live based on that information. I think those are the two things that I would change mainly.
All right, this was not on your notes. I'm throwing in something completely different here, but you guys can think on your feet. So I actually did a little internet research on a whole bunch of stereotypes of Penn. And I'm going to throw them out here, and I'm going to ask you guys if you think they're true or not. Does that work?
Sure.
And if you disagree, that's fine, right? Whatever, just speak your experience. So they're kind of broken down by academic, social, lifestyle, and behavioral. So I'll kind of read all the ones under academic at one time and see if anybody wants to take them up. So under academic, we have slackers, party animals. Okay. We have overachievers, nerds. You know, we have undecided lost. And it says those who seem unsure of their major, spend lots of time switching courses, wandering, trying to find their way. And then we have tech savvy, meme loving, always on laptops and phones. So I'll just repeat those: overachievers, nerds, slackers, party animals, undecided lost, tech savvy, meme loving. Anyone want to take on any of them?
I think you can find all those students at Penn. I feel like that's like almost every school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree. I don't think those are like necessarily unique to Penn. I think that is also a part of that age range between like 18 and 21 is so formative developmentally. Like you really change a lot in college, you know? I would say though that I do think that Penn gets a bad rep of like the work hard, play harder type of situation. And I never found that to be a problem for me personally. Like, I think that it was a school where, like, you were incentivized because you wanted to enjoy your time and there was a lot to do socially, but also I never felt like I lacked time or like I was staying up until 4 a.m. so that I could, like, spend my weekend out and about. I think that that's, like, pretty big common misconception, especially because most of the time, like, the way Penn's schedule works, you rarely ever have a full course load day on Fridays. Wharton doesn't have class on Fridays at all. And like if I ever had a class, it was like either one class or one recitation. So your whole Friday is sort of just for you to like have club meetings, do your homework, all that kind of stuff. So like if you use that time, there's no reason why you can't spend your Saturday doing whatever it is that you choose to do on your Saturday. You know what I mean? I don't know if you would agree, Summer.
Wait, no, I do totally agree. I think like our social balance was something that motivated me to get my work done. And like coming in as engineering as someone who's super social, I knew I wanted to join Greek life. That was something that I was especially worried about. But I feel like I'm able to find the time. I also do my dance rehearsals on the weekends. I think especially in college, your classes are spread out throughout the day. So I think what's different than high school is like you really have to like segment your time and be responsible. And once you figure out all of your time management and you're motivated enough, you can find the time to hang out with your friends. And I think it's really fun because there's all those options at Penn for you.
Absolutely. And the good thing about Penn is that people are busy. So people being busy teaches you how to manage being busy. Like I looked to upperclassmen who I was like, how are you managing your time? What is your balance? Like, what are you doing? How are you doing this all? And what can I do to do that? And like, people are more than happy to tell you. They'll be like, oh, this is really great for the OChem class. I can send you my old notes. Like people are more than happy to help you. So I think it's like a learned skill that we as a Penn community sort of like really rallied around, but I wouldn't say that it's like toxic or
pushes students in the like either too far away from their academics or too like secluded in the library. Like that wasn't my perception when I was there.
So let me throw out some other ones just I've heard from students over the years. One tends to be more focused on grad school than undergrad. And another one is undergraduate classes can be very large. What are your thoughts on those?
I, in engineering, completely disagree with the undergraduate classes being very large. I had a very opposite experience. Personally, in engineering, I think I get like a very personalized experience. All of my professors know my name. I'm always at office hours. You'll have a question during lecture and your professor will email me later. Your professor will email you like later in the day, be like, I was mulling over this question and I think XYZ. And I just think that's really cool because these professors are the best in their field. And it's amazing to like know that they care about you personally. I know a professor in engineering who invites like students to his home for Thanksgiving who are international students and can't go home. And the classes, I think the largest class that I've had was like 100 people max, which seems like a lot if you're in high school, but it really isn't compared to a lot of state schools. And I think my largest class this year was 60 people, and I knew pretty much every single person in that class's name. Mind you, this was a mechanical engineering class. I know a lot of people in my grade. Feels like a super small, tight-knit community. But I think that that's one of the benefits of Penn Engineering is the tight-knit community. The professors are so supportive. And echoing what Daniela was saying, I feel like everyone's super supportive because it is a challenging environment. And I'm not going to lie, but everyone's there to support each other. And I think that's amazing. So
I would say that Penn is pretty pre-professional. Like, I don't think that that's a lie. I think Penn, most students from their very first year, they are thinking like, what am I going to do? What internship am I do? What do I want to do after this? What do I need to be doing now to set myself up for later? And you know what? That is for like a specific type of student. And that's like a decision that you have to make for yourself. I always knew I wanted to study medicine. I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. I was very committed to that goal from day one. So for me, being in an environment that was pre-professional in that sense that I was surrounded with other people who were really working towards like a very clear goal and for the most part was beneficial. And also because that's what the students are looking for, the resources that Penn has are very well set up to help you in that sense. Like I could make an appointment with a career advisor same day. I never ever struggled to get an appointment with anyone ever. Like they would answer my emails immediately. My pre-med advisor from Penn, God bless her soul, like she answered emails for me in every time zone. Like she was so helpful. And I had the same experience with all of my professors. I think my biggest class was Math 104, which now they call like Math 110, 1040. I don't know what they call it now, but that was my biggest class. And I think a thing to keep in mind is that even in very large classes, like there's at least like 4 or 5 TAs. So the class itself doesn't feel that large because for the most part, you're being split up into smaller groups where you still have a TA who's still helpful and is still useful to you. And professors have office hours all the time and they love it when you come. This is my advice to any high school student out there. Go to your professor's office hours. It will only serve you. I had amazing relationships with my professors. It helped me so much when I was getting recommendation letters for medical school because I loved them and they loved me. And like, all you have to do is be brave and show up and like come up with one question. You don't even have to come up with a question. Sometimes I would just go and sit and listen to other people's questions and I got something out of that too. But I think the class size is fine. It is pre-professional. I didn't think it was a bad thing, but that's a personal choice.
Friends, what Daniela just said is so important. And I'm asking Nemanja to go back and replay it. I want you as a parent to get your student and say, you know that podcast, Your College Bound Kid, I listen to a lot? Well, the founder of the podcast asked me to get my student and have them listen to this 1-minute segment. Now, friends, I've been a parent before, and sometimes when you say it, they won't listen to it because familiarity breeds contempt, and they've heard your voice for 14, 15, 16, 17 years, and they tune it out, depending on your student. But they will listen to someone else sometimes. Where if it's you, sometimes some kids are going to run in the opposite direction as fast as possible.
Professors have office hours all the time and they love it when you come. This is my advice to any high school student out there. Go to your professor's office hours. It will only serve you. I had amazing relationships with my professors. It helped me so much when I was getting recommendation letters for medical school because I loved them and they loved me. And like, all you have to do is be brave and show up and like come up with one question. You don't even have to come up with questions. Sometimes I would just go and sit and listen to other people's questions, and I got something out of that too. But I think the class size is fine. It is pre-professional. I didn't think it was a bad thing, but that's a personal choice.
Why don't we talk about the different colleges at Penn? Because somebody may not know that. So, Summer, you want to share what the different colleges are? And, the different colleges can have slightly different cultures, right? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So we have 4 colleges for undergrad. We have engineering, we have the College of Arts and Sciences, and then we have Wharton, which is our business school, and then we have a School of Nursing. So I guess I can talk specifically about the School of Engineering. We have 14 different majors, including AI. That's something that we just added recently, which is a super attractive major. I think that's really cool in the new environment, the new job environment. We have hands-on lab courses starting like freshman year. I think that's amazing. I've gotten so much like hands-on experience, and like you have so much support from your professors. We complete a senior design project, and they kind of build you up from freshman year and prepare you a little less scaffolding every year. And by the end of your time at Penn, you have a product that you can present. And as I was saying, so much personalized support. I mean, professors know your name, super tight-knit community. And something I really enjoyed about Penn when I was touring was we're actually 40% women compared to like a national average that I think is around 20%. So it feels very like even between guys and girls, and that's something that I really enjoyed and wanted to put myself in that environment. I don't know if Daniela wants to talk about College of Arts and Sciences, because personally, you were there.
Yeah, go ahead. Arts and Sciences, Daniela.
The college is sort of like it's a more liberal arts focus. So it's a kind of like a catch-all of everything that wouldn't be specifically engineering, specifically Wharton or nursing. We do take like a core curriculum in the college where we have to take certain classes. Like we have to do a writing sem, which I think is actually just general for everyone. Yeah. And then you have to take classes like in specific different sectors of the college. So you have to take a humanities, and then you have to take, like now that I'm a little bit further out, I'm forgetting, but you do have to kind of jump around the college curriculum to get those core courses in. But then after that, what you do with your major is up to you. And there really is a wide breadth. You could do Africana Studies. I did Health and Society. There is an epidemiology major, like kind of anything you could imagine. There's, I think, over 80 majors and like 40 different minors, or 40 majors and 80 minors that you can choose from in the college. And they each have something to offer.
And it's the largest college by far, at Penn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. That's important to know. It is the largest school, like by far, but it doesn't feel that large because, again, so many majors. It only felt that large at graduation.
Friends, this concludes part 1 of my interview with Summer and Daniela. I hope you join us next week for part 2 of 3. On Monday's episode, I'm going to address a widespread myth that's very prevalent in the counseling community. And that is that going for external or outside scholarships is a colossal waste of your time. I beg to differ. And I'm going to discuss it. I'm also going to have a brand new interview. And it's College Spotlights on a Monday. College Spotlights are on Thursdays, but I've got so many in the kitty. I'm going to give this one to you. It's with Alina Hicks, one of the real professionals in the field. She's the Assistant Vice Provost and the Dean of Admissions at SMU in Dallas. And what I do in this interview is I share 17 impressions that I have developed of SMU over the last, I first visited SMU in 1987. So I guess over the last 38 years. And I asked Alina to comment on them. Now, I waited 8 years for this interview, and Alina delivered. She was the first person to commit, one of the very first people to ever commit to do an interview on our podcast back in early 2018. And partly because of my procrastination, but the bottom line is it took 8 years for us to nail it down. But it was well worth the wait because she delivered some real quality content. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Friend, I close you out with a brand new quote I've never shared on here before. It's by Calvin Coolidge. This is what he said. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Genius will not. Education will not. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. Big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, Please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Escabel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.